Today is World Democracy Day. Most thriving economies are often associated with political stability and various governance institutions. Let's turn to our resident analyst, Clive Ramatibela-Smith, to take this matter further. Good evening, Clive, and thanks as always for joining us. Now tell us just how important is a country's governance system in influencing economic performance?
Yeah, very, very important, Lindewa. I mean, there are three main sectors of the economy that are important in governance, in making sure that everything is aligned and we can actually trust in the principles and the policies that have been allowed. And actually these things are both legal and legislatively speaking, they can actually create a platform for everybody in the country to feel confident about the government and the systems that they put forward. First one I want to mention there is your fiscus. Obviously that is very important. So if that fiscus is well laid out, the policies are understood by everybody, it seems to work well. We're talking about the entirety of the fiscus as well. If you go to the second one, it's a monetary policy. So you need to have controls in interest rates, you need to have controls in borrowing and taking away money. You need to understand those things. And then the last one, which some people actually don't take into consideration, because of the fact that sometimes it's actually very insignificant in particular countries. But what I've seen is that the UK, for example, and America, and probably Africa in the near future will start looking at as well, is one that they have a structural independent development manufacturing culture. So that type of policy seeks to find opportunities within the country that can help it develop.
Now let's take that then to the question of moulding investor perception. What role then do governance institutions and policies play in this, particularly in Africa?
Well, they have to be exemplary, and that's very key. So, for example, if they set principles, if they set policies, they must be able to implement them, they must be able to follow through and have proper research structures to make sure that every aspect of government and business attains the same level of standard that is required by government. And so business looks at that and investors look at that and they make it more attractive to them if these principles are acquired and these principles are met, and they become even more interested in investing in that particular country. So you can understand there's a big relationship taking place there, because for you to buy, I mean, it happens with us as consumers. If you're going to buy at a store, whether it's a retail store, whatever the case may be, I know you ladies love your shoes, so you might be looking at a different type of store that has shoes, at the same shoes perhaps, but what is it that's going to attract you to that store is the kind of client service that you receive, the kind of reception when you arrive there, the feeling that the atmosphere that they create for you that makes you comfortable. And that's what government is supposed to do. It's supposed to make it easy for government, for business, make it easy for investors to come across and to be able to understand the principles that are required for you to do business in that country.
Now let's talk stability, Clive. Can a country's economy thrive when the political situation is not necessarily stable?
No, that's a simple answer. It's no two ways about it, no. And we've seen this, history has proven beyond doubt that when there's instability in the government, normally the economy structures are normally pretty dire. And the reason for that is because you have to trust in the government, in the principles. The government is the door opener to what that country has to offer. And so there's no shortcuts about it. Whatever is standard, whatever is put by governments, that is what the investor and the business people are looking for in that particular country. So without one, it wouldn't exist.
What about democracy itself? Is democracy necessary for economic success?
You want to excite the Chinese now. So I mean, what is democracy? What do we understand democracy to be? You know, it's a rulership or a government for the people, by the people, and it has worked. And let's be honest, it has worked. But we don't want to say that it's probably the most preferred, but certainly we know that there are other applications of governance that can be applied that work similarly. Because if you look at the Chinese story, for example, that has turned this democratic story upside down, because there they are and they're doing it relatively well and they're prospering. They're seeming to be prospering. So the question is, how do we make sure that this democracy is actually successful in the particular countries that it uses? You must make sure that those people that implement the democratic alliance or the democratic policies are able to meet the requirements that are needed for them, the government, to succeed. So it doesn't matter whether you use communism, socialism, whether you use any other sort of governance. The important thing is that there has to be transparency, clarity, and most importantly, attractiveness for business to come into that business, and into that country, and that's what will make it work.
And finally, Clive, what about the link between democracy and development?
Democracy, development, very key, very important, because normally if I have similarities and you have similarities, it's easy for us to actually find a way to negotiate. So as opposed to when you have differences and I've got differences and we can't sit down on the same table. So development means that there's demand. Democracy means that there's an opening for the demand to be met. So that means that this relationship needs to work both ways so we can both benefit. At the end of the day, the most important people that benefit here are your low LSM people who are trying to strive to get a job. The working class, that's who we're looking after.